For ages, the vast, windswept grasslands of Mongolia have been the stage for some of the most epic dramas in human history. Long before the world ever heard the name Genghis Khan, this land saw empires rise, clash, and just completely crumble. And these silent monuments, scattered all across the steppe, they've watched it all unfold.
So let's jump right into this incredible story. We're going to explore how the Mongolian steppe was this crucible, like a high-pressure furnace that forged one nomadic power after another, eventually leading to the single greatest land empire the world has ever seen.
You see, the story of the Mongols doesn't just pop up out of nowhere in the 12th century. For more than 1,000 years before that, the steppe was a relentless game of king of the hill. The rule was simple. Whoever could dominate the grasslands could build an empire. So let's meet some of the major players. It really all kicks off with the Xiongnu. Around the 3rd century BC, they put together the first great nomadic confederacy, a powerful alliance of different tribes. These guys were so dominant, they actually forced China's Han dynasty to pay them tribute, and even helped inspire the building of the Great Wall. They pretty much wrote the playbook for every steppe empire that came after them. But out on the steppe, no dynasty lasts forever. As the Xiongnu started to fade, the proto-Mongolic Xianbei rose up to take their place. They grabbed control of the grasslands and kept that cycle of conquest going, proving that power in this part of the world was always up for grabs. Next up were the Rorun, and they brought a really crucial political innovation to the table. They were the very first to use the title Khagan, which means Great Khan or Emperor. Now, that's a title that would echo through the centuries and, yeah, you guessed it, be famously adopted by Genghis Khan himself. And this next transition, it perfectly sums up the brutal politics of the steppe. The Go-Turks were once subjects of the Ruram, basically forced to work as their blacksmiths. But in 552 AD, they rose up in what's known as the Blacksmiths' Rebellion, shattered their old masters, and literally forged a massive empire of their own. You gotta love the irony, right?
So are you seeing the pattern here? Xiongnu, Xianbei, Ruran, Gokturks, Uyghurs, and finally, the Khitans. For a solid 1,000 years, it was this constant cycle. One nomadic empire rises up, only to be overthrown by the next one, all playing out on the very same stage. This relentless history created this deep-seated tradition of state-building and warfare that was just baked into the culture of the steppe.
But by the 12th century, that cycle had completely broken down. The last great empire, the Khitans, had fallen apart, and in its place was a huge power vacuum. The entire Mongolian plateau just descended into this chaotic, violent free-for-all.
Okay, so in this total mess, you've got 5 major players locked in this constant, brutal fight for supremacy. You had the powerful Tatars out in the east, the Karaites right in the center, the Naimans in the west, the Merkits up north, and a struggling, fractured confederacy you might recognize, the Khamag Mongols. And here's the kicker. The Mongols were far from being the dominant power. Not even close. They were so fractured and weak that, as history tells us, they couldn't even agree on a single leader to unite them. They were, simply put, a people in crisis. So this really begs the question, right? In a world defined by just endless betrayal and warfare, how could anyone possibly put all these pieces back together? Who on earth could possibly rise up from all this chaos? Well, the answer came in the form of a boy named Temujin. He was born right into this world of violence and uncertainty, and he would not only unite his people, he would go on to reshape the entire world. His beginnings were anything but grand. Really rough. When Temujin was just 9 years old, his father, who was a minor Mongol chief, was poisoned by his Tatar rivals. And then his own clan just abandoned his family, leaving them to starve on the unforgiving steppe. This brutal childhood forged this unbreakable will inside of him, a will to survive and to win. Temujin's rise wasn't sudden. It was this methodical, step-by-step conquest. First, bam, he defeats the Merkits, who had kidnapped his wife, which started to build his reputation. Then he systematically destroyed the Tatars, finally getting revenge for his father's death. Next, in a totally ruthless move, he turned on and conquered his former allies, the Karaites, and finally he overthrew the last great rival, the Naiman Confederacy. One by one, he brought every single tribe on the steppe to heel. So by the early 1200s, after decades of relentless warfare, the chaos was finally ending. The stage was set for the creation of something the steppe had never seen before, a single, unified Mongol nation.
And it all comes down to one pivotal year, 1206. A great assembly of all the newly united tribes, what they called a Kurultai, was called on the banks of the Anan River. This was the moment that would change the course of world history forever.
At this assembly, Temujin was given a new name, Genghis Khan, or as we know him, Genghis Khan. It means oceanic ruler or emperor of all Mongols. And for the very first time, the Tartars, Karaites, Naimans, and Mongols were no longer sworn enemies. They were one people, one nation, under one leader. Just think about that. So what's the first thing he does as Khan? He completely reorganizes his entire society. He gets rid of all the old, chaotic tribal divisions and restructures the whole population into a military system based on units of 10. Almost overnight, this creates a single, unified, and incredibly disciplined army of 95,000 cavalrymen, all loyal to him and him alone.
And the results? Absolutely explosive. All the energy that had been spent on centuries of internal warfare was now pointed outwards. The newly unified Mongol nation just erupted from the steppe, launching a wave of conquests that, in just a few decades, would forge the largest contiguous land empire in the history of the world.
But hey, the story isn't just about conquest. The true legacy of the Mongol Empire is how it fundamentally transformed the world.
This era is now known as the Pax Mongolica, or the Mongol Peace. By controlling the entire breadth of Asia, the Mongols created a century of relative stability. For the first time in history, merchants, missionaries, and explorers could travel safely along the Silk Road, all the way from Europe to China. It was incredible.
And this new global connection, it changed everything. Technologies like gunpowder, the compass, and printing moved west, completely reshaping Europe. At the same time, art, medicine, and new ideas flowed east. And internally, Genghis Khan established a unified law code and a written language for his people, creating a national identity that still endures today. He didn't just conquer the world, he connected it.
And the sheer scale of this empire was just staggering. It stretched from the Pacific shores of Korea all the way to the plains of Hungary and Central Europe. In many ways, it was the first globalized world, enforced by the hoofbeats of the Mongol cavalry.
Now, the empire itself eventually fractured, breaking apart almost 700 years ago. But its impact never truly vanished. It redrew the map of Asia, it rerouted global trade, and it created connections that laid the groundwork for our modern world. So, I'll leave you with this question. How do you think that ancient legacy still shapes the world we live in today?